The sun never sets on the British Empire. For more than a century, this was not a metaphor, it was a logistical reality. At its peak, Britain controlled or influenced territory on every inhabited continent. Across the span of the 16th to early 20th centuries, British forces, companies, or agents entered, occupied, or exploited nearly 90% of the countries that exist today. Not all at once, not always with armies, but over time, almost nowhere on Earth was untouched. By 1913 alone, Britain ruled over roughly 23% of the world's population. Nearly 1 in 4 human beings lived under British authority or economic control. No empire in history had ever reached that scale. So how did a small island off the coast of Europe pull this off? The answer is not genetics, destiny, or superior culture. It was systems, economic systems, naval systems, and a unique alliance between state power and private profit. Ironically, Britain started late. Portugal, Spain, France, and the Dutch all explored and colonized earlier, but Britain learned from their mistakes. Instead of direct imperial rule everywhere, Britain outsourced risk. Many invasions were not ordered by the crown. They were initiated by private companies, merchant fleets, chartered corporations, and investors chasing profit. The British government offered protection when necessary, but businesses were often free to conquer, trade, and govern as they pleased. This blurred line between state and commerce became Britain's greatest weapon. The foundation of everything was the sea. Britain invested obsessively in ships, not occasionally, constantly. While other European powers built fleets during wartime and downsized in peace, Britain never stopped. As an island nation, Britain understood one rule: if you control the oceans, you control trade, movement, and war. Geography helped. Britain sat upwind of Europe, benefiting from prevailing westerlies that made sailing faster and more predictable. Natural deep water ports allowed rapid deployment, abundant coal, iron, and oak-fed shipbuilding at scale. But resources were finite, and that scarcity created pressure. To sustain the system, Britain had to expand outward to seize new resources, new labor, and new markets. A powerful navy served two purposes. First, defense. Britain could repel rivals like France and protect its merchant fleets. Second, profit. In an age before air travel, ships were the arteries of the global economy. Whoever owned them owned the world. By the 1600s, Britain had the vessels. What it needed next was motivation. That motivation was money. Unlike early explorers driven partly by curiosity, British expansion was calculated. By the time Britain moved aggressively, maps were drawn, trade routes were known, and resources were identified. Entrepreneurs knew exactly where the wealth was: India, the Caribbean, Southeast Asia, the Americas. The Crown encouraged private expeditions, offering naval protection in exchange for taxes and loyalty. Armed traders arrived first, soldiers followed later. Where technological superiority met weaker societies, outcomes were predictable. Resistance was crushed, resources were seized, people were displaced or absorbed into the system. This created a self-reinforcing loop. More territory produced more resources funded more ships enabled more conquest, and crucially, Britain avoided the trap that ruined Spain and France: overspending on colonies. Once established, colonies were expected to pay for themselves. Administration was minimal, infrastructure investment was limited, risk stayed private, profits flowed home. The government's role was simple: protect trade routes, suppress rebellion, and collect taxes. This low-cost, high-return model turned empire building into a business. But there was a darker layer beneath it all. From the late 1500s onward, Britain entered the transatlantic slave trade. By 1663, the state formally sanctioned the buying and selling of human beings. Slaves became capital assets. Labor costs collapsed. Plantation profits exploded. Cities like Liverpool and Bristol grew rich on human suffering. The Royal African Company institutionalized slave procurement. Entire regions of Africa were destabilized to feed demand. This system was not incidental. It was foundational. Cheap labor powered sugar, tobacco, and cotton economies. Profits funded ships, factories, and further expansion. Slavery made the empire scalable. When slavery was abolished and the American colonies were lost, Britain pivoted east. India became the new center of gravity. Private companies had already laid the groundwork, manipulating rulers, controlling trade, and building influence. In 1858, Britain formalized control. India provided raw materials, cheap labor, and strategic depth across Asia. From there, Britain expanded outward again into surrounding regions, ports, and trade corridors. What made all of this possible was Britain's early embrace of private corporations. Chartered companies could raise capital, spread risk, and move faster than states. The government backed them with force when needed, profits were shared, control remained indirect, state and market fused into one engine. And yet, Britain did not invade everywhere. Around 22 modern countries avoided British invasion, often because they were landlocked, strategically costly, or politically dangerous to attack. Deep inland campaigns offered little return and high risk. Britain avoided them deliberately. Even the famous 90% figure comes with caveats. Invasion could mean a port, a trading post, or brief occupation. Borders shifted, definitions matter, but the core truth remains. Britain built the largest empire in human history without planes, without satellites, and without modern logistics. It did it through ships, money, corporations, and a ruthless understanding of incentives. Control the oceans, monetize expansion, outsource risk, tax everything. That was the system.
And systems, not myths, are what shape the world.